Welcome, Strongies. It's Amy Clover here from Strong Inside Out, and we've got somebody here who I've been wanting to introduce to you for a very long time. She's my really good friend named Kate Marolt, and we're going to be collaborating on something very special very soon, so I thought you should see her now. Now, Kate Marolt is a coach, she's a speaker, she's a teacher, and she advocates for women everywhere to feel at home in their bodies and in their selves. I can't wait for you to meet her. So here she is. Welcome, Strongies. I've got one of my very good friends, Kate Marolt, here on the show with us today. And we're just going to talk about real stuff today. Kate, welcome.
Hey, thank you. Hi.
I'm so glad we're finally doing this after years of knowing each other.
Me too.
I know, it's so awesome. Okay, so would you want to tell people a little bit about yourself and where you're coming from?
Sure. So I'm Kate. I am in the online space. I work with a lot of women and sometimes men on really feeling at home in their bodies and really creating a sense of like peace and security within themselves in the middle of all this crazy stuff that gets thrown at us in the world around diets, around body image, around like how we're supposed to act and be in the world. And like when some part of us doesn't line up with that, it can feel really disconcerting and really lonely. And so really looking at how we can bring all of that into alignment so that you or whoever it is that is in this work at the moment can really feel free to express yourself, to be yourself, and to enjoy your life in the way that you want to enjoy your life. And that's where I'm at now, and it's super fun. It's definitely not where I always was. So I don't know if you want me to go into like my story right now.
I would love to. Yeah, I'd love to hear all about your background, where you came from, because it's an amazing story that you have.
Oh, thank you. I'd say probably about 10 years, 15 years ago was when I went on my first diet and I was like early teens being like, okay, something's got to change because I'm not happy. And all the magazines I'm reading are telling me it's because I'm not thin enough or I'm not fit enough or I'm not eating right. And so that was kind of where I ended up going was like, oh, well, I'm really smart. I'm doing all great. Like I love school. Like, I'm doing speech team and I'm in the plays and I'm in art class and doing all these things. And I was like, everything else in my life is great. But if I'm not happy, it must be because my body isn't good enough. Mm-hmm. So that was the message that I got really early on. And that was a message I've held on to for a really, really long time. And I never told anybody, not even my parents, that I was, dieting or counting calories and working out. But by the time I was 17, I was weighing myself every day and really kind of basing my worth on the number that I saw on the scale or how many calories the elliptical machine had said that I had burned that day. And
we all know that's the truth. Like that's just, right. It just never lies. It's completely real. Not Strongies. It's the worst thing.
Yeah, completely real. It doesn't even ask me like anything about my body. But that's what I thought. I thought that's what I needed to do. And, kind of going into college, university, I kind of kept that up, but I just amplified all of it because I was on my own for the first time. And not only did I amplify doing all of the achieving things because that was one way to prove to the world that I was worthy. Like, well, if I can, get 2 degrees and study abroad and have 3 jobs and still get all A's and be the president of the ultimate Frisbee team and volunteer in my spare time, like everyone will see that I'm worthy. That was my like desire in the world. I wasn't aware of it so much at the time, but I kept knowing that I just had to do more and figure it out. But underneath all of that was this like really crazy roller coaster of emotions where like I would go out and binge drink and then I would come home and weigh myself, or I'd like wake up the next morning and be like, okay, now I'm on a diet. This is happening. And I would only eat like certain things, but then I would go out and drink again and like have a burrito at 4 a.m. And like all this, there was this crazy like cycle of like, okay, I'm going to have self-control. Oh my God, I fucked it up. And like, this back and forth constantly. And by the time I left the city that I was living in about a couple months after university was over, I was probably weighing myself like 15, 16 times a day. And like running home between classes, getting up in the middle of hanging out with friends to go use the scale in the bathroom. And it was such a weird disconnect between this feeling of like, I am strong and capable and I can accomplish anything in the world, but also this like need to like control this thing about me that I was certain just wasn't good enough, and it was never going to be good enough until, I got to a certain goal, but then I would get to the goal and it would have to be the next goal. And I'm not going to that was like still years ago at this time, but when I moved and my scale broke in the move, when I got to Denver, I moved to Denver. I was like, my scale broke. That was the first thing I did. I like found it, I pulled it out, and I was like, oh, this might be a sign. Because
Divine intervention there.
Yeah, I was literally saying like, if I stay in the city that I live in, I'm gonna die. Like I knew that just because of the way that I was living. I was like, this isn't. I'm gonna die. Like I can't stay here. And it's interesting because then, over the years, I became a yoga instructor. I accidentally became a fitness instructor. I tell people that all the time. Like, I wanted to teach more yoga classes, and the place that I was teaching at was like, well, we don't have yoga available, but if you want to teach, spin or bar or kettlebells or all these things, you can take the trainings and do that. I was like, okay, sure. Never thought I would be a spin instructor my entire life. And I loved that. I did that for about 3 years. It was amazing. But what I found is that I had actually, like at first I was like, this is great. This is positive. Like I'm taking care of my body. Everything feels awesome. I was like getting into like the spiritual side of yoga too. I was like, this is really cool. But what I was also doing was, I had like a heart rate monitor and was counting calories with every class I was teaching. And the more I learned about nutrition, the more I could be super like particular about weighing my food and what I was eating. And like nobody else was eating these specific foods. So it was totally normal if I didn't either. And like, I would go on sugar detoxes and cleanses, and then I would do the Whole30, and I would do all these things, none of which are in themselves bad or wrong at all. But when I was using those as a way to fix myself, it didn't work. I would do it and feel really accomplished. And as soon as I got done, I would go binge eat on something. And then I was like, nobody can know because I'm the yoga teacher. I'm supposed to have my shit together.
It's that perfectionism. And I think that, oh my gosh, I just love your story so much because we both had these similar journeys, and I think we were going parallel for a while and just not talking to each other about them, which is so funny because now we're both doing this work of like, our fucking worth is not based on what we look like. It's not based on, all of these things that we do and how much we accomplish. It just is there. And that's why I think that we just recently come back together like full swing. And it's just so exciting to me because while we do this work, I don't know if you've realized this too, like we just start kind of like finding those people who are also like, you're okay. Like this is acceptance is a good thing, even if you're not perfect yet. And perfection is like something we talk about a lot on Strong Inside Out. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about how you kind of started to heal your perfectionism?
Yeah. It was definitely like incremental and practice, and I would go in and out of it. But, after those like 3 years of teaching classes, I hit a similar kind of breaking point. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that I felt like I was going to die. I just realized like I'm still burning myself out every couple months. Mm-hmm. I am still overdoing and trying to please everybody. Like I love the work that I'm doing, and like I can't do it in this way anymore was kind of my realization. And like what was scary about it was I really wanted to work with people on the emotional side of things and like see how our our mental and creative power is so tied into how we feel about our bodies. But I wasn't there yet. And so it scared me, and I didn't see anybody else doing it. And so finally I just said like, I have to take a step back. And part of my like starting to heal that perfectionism was I just stopped doing things for a while.
Yeah.
And I had to just like undo so much tension in my body, so many beliefs that I had about who I was and how I operated in the world. And I definitely did it I had support. I had, I had coaches, I had people around me. I left the country a few times to just see how different people lived and like experience the world. Mm-hmm. But it was big, and it was a big piece of that was stepping away from everything that I thought I knew to be true. Mm-hmm. Like literally I'd sold all my stuff, left my house, like left the city that I had called home for a while. And I'm not saying that needs to happen for everybody at all. I tend to be extreme sometimes when I'm deciding I'm changing things, but it really was like an undoing.
I think you really brought up a really good point. Really, really, really. You said that you were extreme about basically your recovery, and that's the same thing that happened to me. Like right in the beginning, I was like, distraction-free eating, I'm doing it for 6 weeks, no exceptions. And like, it's so funny how we like try to heal this extreme thinking that we have with another extreme action. And luckily that led us to, a more balanced result. But how would you recommend that somebody go about this if they don't want to go into the extreme, if they really want to do a balanced version of this?
Yeah, I think that's great. And I would not recommend being extreme about it.
Me either.
The biggest thing that I've found, and I say this about basically everything, is like we have to start with where we are. Mm-hmm. So you like to begin by taking a really clear inventory of like what is in your life right now. Where is your time going? Where is your energy going? How do you feel in certain situations and with certain people? And like notice, like, how do you feel in your house? How do you feel at your work? Like and not trying to change anything yet, but just really being aware of like, what is here? Like, who is that person that like, no matter what they ask you, you're just like, oh yeah, totally, I'll do it. And then later you're like, why did I say that? Like, I feel like we all have, in some degree, one of those 1 or 2 or 5 of those people in our life.
1 or 2 or 5.
Yeah. And just starting to like be aware of where time and energy goes, because that's going to point you to your perfectionist tendencies. So it's like, oh, I'm like constantly late, but I'm constantly late because I'm like trying to organize my house or do this thing. And like, I have to complete that last email before I leave the house. It's like, oh, what's underneath that? Like, why do I feel that urge? And starting to look at those places.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good tip. Just starting with the awareness of it. That's really wonderful. Okay. So you talked a little bit about body positivity. Well, this all connects into body positivity, but coming from a space where all we've known, both of us kind of went through this, and I think a lot of strongies go through it too, because they're starting with diet and exercise, and that feels great until it gets obsessive, until it gets extreme, until it starts ruling our minds. And it becomes more fear-based instead of what makes my body feel good, what feels healthy to me, more like I need to be this size, I need to be this weight in order to, be anything.
Yeah.
So how would you recommend somebody who's in that space, who is feeling like, I want to take these steps, I want to love myself more, or even I'm just done with hating myself. Like, I just don't want to hate myself anymore, even if it's not to the point of I want to love myself. I just don't want to hate myself anymore. But I feel like there are all of these expectations that society places on me. How do I step into that fear and start doing something about hating myself?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I'm going to both give a little context and say baby steps.
Yeah.
This is not a time for extreme action at all. And that, there's this, there's a really interesting place of that where, like, I think I shared with me, where like, I thought I knew I was pretty awesome. I knew I was pretty great. And like, for whatever reason, I just could not reconcile that with my body until I was ready, until I actually was like, you know what, this makes me really nervous, and I don't even know if this is possible, but I want to feel like I deserve to be at home in my body. And I don't know how to feel that, but I want to feel that. And like first thing that I kind of did with somebody else's guidance was I just wrote an open letter to my body.
I've done that too.
Yeah. And I just said all the things that I felt like I needed to say. It was both like anywhere from like, here's why I thought you betrayed me, to like, I'm so sorry for treating you this way, to like, thank you for doing this, or like, why did this happen? And just like writing out everything I'd ever thought about my body. Mm-hmm. And it was super emotional and super like, at the end of it, I didn't really feel like anything had changed, but it started the process. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Just like, what happens if I'm not trying to change anything, but I am willing to start communicating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. I think that should be a title of your course, by the way, Communicate.
I almost just spit my coffee out.
I would have loved that. I heard that and I was like, trademark.
Best pun ever.
No, that's such a good point. Is just, and Lindy West talks about this in her book Shrill too, about how you just can't force being ready. You just come to a point where you're like, I am just done hating myself. And it's different for every person. And, different things will bring us there. But I don't think it's something that we can force to happen. It's not something that we can just like push ourselves into. It just is a realization that we're done hating ourselves now. And hopefully, as more and more of us start talking about this, especially in the wellness space here too, hopefully we'll make it acceptable for people to start having that realization earlier and earlier. I know that's like a mission of mine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like with that too, it's like, I know for a long time, I kept having that thought of like, I should be better than this. I know better than this. Like I should have this figured out by now. And I think that is kind of a trademark saying of smart, intelligent people of like, I should know better. So why, like those of us, at least, like for me, I was taught that like the intellectual mental realm is a safe place. That's where I can, I can logic and reason and argue and do all these things and figure stuff out there. So that was the safe place. And I was like, I get it all in my head. Why isn't this happening in my life? Like, why can't I figure this out? And it's because it's not just a head thing. Like we can say we're ready, but we have to start to feel it and like be okay with knowing that we're not going to have it all figured out before we get going.
Yeah. And I know that for me too, like I know you are a spiritual person as well. And for me, I was kind of, but I just like, I grew up in an atheist household. So it was so weird and like not acceptable, like in my family. And it's something I had to come to on my own, but embracing that everything happens for a reason for me, because I'm just kind of like open with spirituality. It really helped me to let some of the pressure off of myself so I could start taking those actions too. So it wasn't just, why can't I get this, beating myself up for it all the time, but really opening up to maybe I'm just supported in ways that I can't even see. Maybe I'm being led in this direction. Maybe it hurts for a reason. Like that kind of stuff really helped me a lot. But can you talk a little bit about how that has helped you as well?
Totally. So I'm on the one side, like I feel super fortunate that when I was a teenager, I was given the opportunity to go to some leadership and success seminars where I was taught basically like the law of attraction and the law of action and like these like kind of laws of the universe that get sprinkled throughout a lot of different spiritual new age stuff these days. But I was taught it by like old, not old, they were like middle-aged. When I was old 15, they were old. Yeah. Like older men who are super successful business owners who are just like, yeah, this is how it works. Here's how this works. And so to me, and I know this it totally speaks to our society, since those were the people teaching me, I felt like, okay, this must be true, because they were like men who wore suits and owned multi-million-dollar companies. And like, I was like, well, if it works for them, like it's gotta be a real thing. And it's funny because now I like see people kind of sharing those things. I'm like, oh yeah, I learned that a long time ago. So that was really cool in the sense that I had that as a base. But one thing that really shifted things for me was a couple years ago when I had one of my coaches say, okay, I want you don't get to ask what's wrong with me, the world, or this situation anymore. You only get to ask what's right about this. And I was like, oh, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
You want me to do what? And it was interesting because I practiced that like really diligently, even though I was like, there were certain things where like there can't possibly be anything wrong, like right about this. But I would just say like, what's right about this? Or like, what if there's something like, if this is what's happening, like why? Like I wonder what's going to happen because of it. Like trying to take that more bird's eye view of like, here's where I'm at in this moment. I'm present to it, but also I have no idea how this is going to affect me or the world over time.
Yes, completely. And that's something I just went through. We taught together at Camp Nerd Fitness. It's one of the things we've done 3 years running together now. And I got pink eye this last week, which was hilarious because it's an adult camp, not a kids camp. So it's really hard to get pink eye. I don't even understand how I got it. But when I initially got it, that spiral happened in the very beginning. I was like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? Am I unclean? Like, especially with my OCD and stuff like that, it was just like, oh, so unclean. But then I had to forcefully almost stop myself and say, okay, this is being brought to me for a reason. What is this here to teach me? And it completely shifted that mindset. And that takes practice, guys. It's not going to happen like right off the bat either. But I think asking like, what's right about this or what could be right about this is a great stepping stone into shifting that paradigm for yourself for sure. Well,
absolutely.
And also, I mean, I know that you do, this is kind of like out of the blue. Sorry, I'm just totally switching. But
That's cool.
yeah, I know you talk a lot about meditation. Like you are a meditation guru. Like,
Oh.
first of all, your voice is like the most peaceful thing ever. And we just taught a class together at Camp Nerd Fitness too. And just, you didn't even lead a meditation, but the whole time I was like, just listening to you speak. But I know you do a lot of meditation and you teach a lot of meditation. So how has meditation helped you along this kind of journey of accepting yourself too?
Such a great question. And meditation is still the thing I resist the most, which is probably why I teach it so much and like speak to it so much. Because as somebody who was constantly like, go, 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 gotta do this stuff, gotta, finish that, accomplish that, be at this place at this time. And my brain like never stops. It's always going, like right until I fall asleep. And then right when I wake up, it's like, I always have crazy dreams. Like my brain is always going. And so when I first started meditation, it was in my very first yoga teacher training, like 6 years ago. And I was so fascinated by it because I was fortunate to have a really great teacher who told me that like it wasn't about emptying my thoughts. It wasn't about like achieving enlightenment. It was simply about observing and being aware. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I can go from that place. And I find now, like I still don't meditate every day. I would love to say that I did. I don't. But now I can feel that these like signals of like, you need to be still. Because if I'm in a place of like kind of feeling anxious or overwhelmed or like, I have so much work to do, I need to do this. And I kind of start spinning. That's my signal of like stillness. Come to stillness. And that's like what I try and teach and share with people is like how to do that, how to recognize those signals and how to just like sit and be in your body without trying to like change the thoughts, without trying to be different in any way, but just noticing, just being aware. And it has helped me so many ways, but mostly in that like what I've discovered, especially through more like somatic meditation, which is like body-centered meditation, is that when I sit and give my body permission to, communicate with itself, to communicate with the environment around me, that a lot of information and messages and signals come in, not necessarily ones I understand in my brain, but more information is available to my body and my cells, and they're able to communicate better with each other, which to me starts to look like I have more energy. I feel more at peace. Like I feel less stressed. I can quiet down when I'm like, my nervous system's all crazy. And that's been like one of the biggest, most amazing things. And I also think too, it's important that like, cool if you meditate for 30 or 45 minutes or whatever, but you can get the same types of benefits in 5 minutes if you're really willing to sit and be present from the get-go.
Yes, because if it was 30 to 45 minutes, I would never ever meditate.
The only times I do that is when I go to like meditation retreats or like yoga things. And it's great when that happens. And for me, at least, that's not for me right now.
Yeah.
Like regularly.
I totally hear you on that. Totally. Oh my gosh, you have so much more even to share with us, but I think we're going to give Strongies a little bit of a break, and I want them to be able to find you. So where can they find you? Where can they follow you?
Yeah, my website is katemarolt.com, and I'm super active on Instagram and on Facebook. So Instagram is like Kate_Marolt, and Facebook is my name. I'm the only one. There's two, and they're both me. So it's pretty easy to find me. But yeah, I would love to connect. I'd love if there's questions, like please reach out.
Awesome. And you can get some of Kate's meditations on her site too. And believe me, they're awesome. So, Kate, thank you so much for coming over here. I'm very excited to announce to Strongies something that we are doing together very soon, but no hints here. We're going to tell you very soon. But thank you for joining us today. Have a wonderful day, Strongies.
Hey, bye.